Ask the Podcast Coach for June 6, 2015.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Oh, it's Saturday. It's June. How did that happen? Holy cow.
Crazy.
You turn around and the next thing you're like, hey, May, we're done. We'll see you. Bye. Nice seeing you, May. But welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach, where you can get your podcast questions answered live. We are here every Saturday morning at askthepodcastcoach.com/live every Saturday at 10:30. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. And joining me, as always, my right-hand man, my toucan Sam. I'm trying to think of other things that rhyme, and I'm just out of it. The one, the only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Good morning, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. We'll be saying Merry Christmas here before long. God, it's goes so fast.
Yeah. It's
keep track of how many of these we've done from a numbers perspective, because last time we checked, it was some ridiculous number, and it when you don't mark the numbers, they just fly by.
They just fly by.
By.
It is. I think we're in the 80s.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It
started as just kind of goofing around. Has become it's become good. I really look forward to Saturday mornings, and I love hanging out with the chat room. So
yes,
thanks for having me.
Our chat room is rock and roll. I'm behind the scenes. 60, 70. This is show 77.
Yeah. We don't really number them that way. You know, a lot of podcasters number them, and you just never did. And so that's been a good experiment. And can you, because everybody, we've had long talks about numbering conventions. Yeah. Do you put it at the beginning? Do you put it at the end? Do you shorten, all those discussions that we've had? By the way, you put them at the end. And yes. But you've just never numbered these. And I think that's cross the grain for our podcast circles. Everybody else numbers them. So I think that's a good experiment, Dave. And I don't think you have to number them. You only number them for you, I think, in most cases. The listeners don't care. They're not like, oh, hey, 73 is out. They don't care. They're just, what's the newest thing? I always look at the date on my phone. Hey, is a new one out? When did it come out? So I don't think they care, but I think we do. So it was good style.
I see it's always fun doing a live show. I see in the chat room, Daniel said, hey, I think Mixlr isn't working. And the answer is correct. Mixlr is not working today. It's kind of we're talking about this before we went on the air. I'm like, I haven't touched a button. I've barely been in my office this week, and it's just like, not it's live, it's spinning, it's saying there, but I can see here we have no lights blinking. So
Mixlr, that piece of software crashes consistently on me on a Windows box. So I run it on Windows 7. It should work great. It just periodically, both here at home and the home studio, as well as at work in the work studio, continuously crashes on me. So I'll be running it. I'll fire it up before we start a podcast, and I'll just leave it. And then they've got that funny little round button that you got to push to go. I still don't understand that. Yeah.
By all means, don't put anything that says play. That would be way too obvious.
I know. Let's not put a record button there. Would make sense. But anyways, and then it just crashes, and it's like, hey, Mixlr's having trouble. And I thought maybe it was, my PC image is kind of messed up. And then it started doing it to me at work. So that's been a little frustrating with Mixlr. While you're trying to fix that. Well, the other thing I've noticed with Mixlr, of course, they downgraded. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. They downgraded a lot of us. They gave the premium or the pro or whatever it was a year ago. They just downgraded that. I was a little sad. So my workaround for that really is when you are doing a show that's longer than an hour, I don't ever save anything on Mixlr out to the show reel. So when you hit the hour, you just restart the player, and that works out really well, Dave. The listeners are going to miss maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and if you're not paying attention, they might miss a little bit more. But our Mixlr numbers listening live are not large enough, even on the Gallup podcast, where we have the potential to get hundreds live. Mixlr maybe makes up 3 or 4 people at a time, and that's really manageable. So that's kind of been my workaround on the Mixlr deal.
Yeah, it's I'm not going to fiddle with it at this point. I've stopped the stream, restarted it. did a couple things, and it's just like, no,
You're
sorry.
on Spreaker. You're live on Spreaker then?
I'm
as
live
well?
on Spreaker. Yeah,
Okay.
Spreaker's on the on our actual web page. If you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/live, that's where you can. We always use Spreaker there, but I know we're also on Mixler because I know Jason. Yeah, we'll listen on Mixler. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure. I think he said it has better streaming.
It does have better, streaming wise, Mixler has better quality. So I like that. I prefer that to Spreaker. Spreaker for audio only. Once you've recorded out there, they definitely have the ecosystem to support if someone's going to be in app listening to stuff. Although their design, they're both their iPhone and Android player, the design is not as intuitive as I'd like it to be. It's more set up. I don't know how it's set up, to be honest with you. I've tried doing it several times. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'd like it to be more like a podcast player, right? Where you can subscribe and they show up in a list and you can click on them and it drills in. That would make more sense. And I think if Spreaker went more along that route, it's just not a great, it's like designed for discovery. Well, you only do so much discovery. Do like Clamor does and have its discovery page, right? Where it's kind of separate and that's the purpose of it. And then when I want to subscribe to them, have a subscribe page. So that would be my opinion.
Yeah, I know they've got some things coming. They're going to redo their app.
Good.
I think,
maybe they'll fix it.
Yeah, and I think he said they were working on a desktop version the last time I talked with Rob. So, but hey, this is a call-in show, so if you would like to call in, that number is 347-850-8007. And again, 347-850-8007. And or if you're like Jessica and Elsie, you can just send in your question. And so we actually have a question, which is interesting because I'm going to interview them right after the show today for the School of Podcasting. That's kind of how that came about, because I was like, hey, we just got the conversation going. I'm like, you know what, you guys, you should come on my show. So here is a question that we all have to deal with. I'm like, this is a great topic just for Ask the Podcast Coach.
Hello, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. Guess who's calling today?
It's us.
It's us. There's two of us leaving you voice feedback today because we have a question.
Jess and Elsie.
Jessica,
She Podcast.
Yes, Jessica and Elsie from She Podcast. Both of us are calling you because, as you know, we have just launched Podcasting School for Women. And it's awesome. It's so cool. It's so great. Isn't it great, Jess? It's so fun.
I love it. I love those people.
But anyway, we had a hater.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we had a hater because we were selling the course online. I mean, not online. What am I saying? In the course, in our newsletter,
via email.
Via email. And so we had somebody sign up for our email list, I think on the one day, right? Just like a day. And then
2 days ago. Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
And then she got an email selling the course. She just happened to sign up for our email list when we're selling the course. And we received kind of a very hateful email back. Right, Jess? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So 2 days ago, she signed up to actually put her show in the She Podcast Women's Directory. And so she got an email back that says, let's get your show in there. And she put her show in, I think, and everything was fine. And then I guess the very next day, she got one email asking people, hey, it's not too late. You can sign up for Podcasting School for Women. So she sent me an email back that said, delete my profile from the site. I did not want to get spammed by joining, and I find it offensive to charge women hundreds of dollars a month for podcasting advice. And then another email came shortly after that, like right after that, and it says, yeah, I've been podcasting since 2009 and I'm on Wikipedia for my work. You're nobody. Go spam some other suckers and don't email me again.
Oh.
So
this got Jess really riled up. I have to say, Dave, that I was not so upset about this, but she was a little bit more upset because, whatever.
Hater.
I know.
Really good.
I'm not accustomed to hate mail. People are generally, I don't know, maybe they're afraid of me or nice to me, or I don't know. We really want to know, what would you do if someone said you're nobody?
Yes, absolutely. I think
would you respond? Let's end it there, shall we?
Yes. No, I know. I totally get it. And I think that, yes, we want to know if somebody says that. And also the other thing too, it's like we've been, supporting women's voices for so long. we have been, we've doing she podcast for 2 years. I've been in the space for a long time. Jess has also been in the space for a long time. And we've never really sold anything. I mean, Jess did. I mean, you did podcasting school for women last year, but still, I just find it really interesting that she just wanted to be on the direct. I don't know, whatever. But what do you think? What do you think? You're nobody and feeling the hate, people asking for our experts' advice. I know that
because first of all, yeah, I also want to know, like, do you research the person and go, I'm nobody, you're nobody, and compare like your nobodiness? Because that's what my instinct was to do. Is
that's
to
everybody's
research
instinct.
The heck out of that person and be like, wait a minute, what nobody is calling
I'll
me
show
nobody?
you.
Oh my God.
That's what I want to know. But I'm guessing you probably wouldn't give it much attention like Elsie did.
Yeah. So anyway.
So anyway, we would love your take on
yes.
that.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. So
Thanks.
But yeah, I love that they send that in there, and
Great way to send a question in, by the way. Sounded good. That was fun.
and so I opted to go to the great philosopher T. Swift, and said hater is going to hate, and it is probably best to shake it off. Shake it off. Shake it off. Yes. Shake it off. Yeah, exactly. Everyone together.
Shake it off, baby.
Yeah. So it's hard, especially when somebody says you're nobody. I don't know anybody likes to hear that phrase, because if we were nobody, we wouldn't. Yeah, I want to go look. I have a podcast. Where's yours at? It is tough. If you're on a microphone, you have an ego. If you're not on a microphone, you have an ego, and so it's kind of tough. And so number one, anytime you're upset, I have. There are times when I look back and go, probably should have waited 24 hours on that one. I've said before, don't make a video when you just watched an Audello video. That is not the time to make a video. The whole thing about somebody, it sounds to me just like bad timing. You know what I mean? Somebody signed up for their Facebook group, and it just so happened at that time they sent out, hey, we just launched our course. So to me, that also makes it sound like this person isn't part of their community. Because anybody that's been listening to She Podcast knows they've been working on this course. So, I wouldn't have been surprised if I'd signed up and got that message that, so, and the fact that somebody's always, some people are going to love you maybe more than you deserve. I don't know if that's the right way to put that. And people are always going to not like you when you don't deserve, they're going to think you're a sleazy whatever, they're going to think negative thoughts about you, whether you deserve them or not. So
yeah, at a minimum, ignore them, right? I think that's just ignore it. That's the best. Answering back or flaming back or firing back never, and this is one thing I'm emphatic on, never pays off. Never, ever, ever pays off. Don't do it. Just not worth it. So let it go. I think ignoring it's minimum, firing back with a very positive, a very apologetic, I am very sorry, you caught us at a bad time. We apologize. I completely understand. We'll do whatever. I think that's really the right way to go. And that's really hard. You got to swallow your pride and kind of say that, man, this, because, you got to do it. I had a guy on Twitter, and I was doing a lot of automatic tweeting and some stuff. And he was calling me on every single one that I was doing, like, this isn't you, kind of deal. And
wow.
And you're putting you're advertising your podcast too much, that kind of stuff. And one day I just tweet, he said, oh, hey, another tweet on this. And I'm like, maybe it's time for you to stop following me.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, maybe it is. And we just ended it at that point. And sometimes you just got to fire the people that are listening to you. You just got to let them go and just say, hey, you know what? We're not compatible. Let's not do this anymore. And just let them go. You don't want every listener, by the way. You don't want them all. So I think it's fine just to let them go.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to have every listener because, man, your show would have to be so just white bread Melba toast, not offensive,
Yeah. Well, but I think you got to look internally first, right? So besides the haters, like the ones who are just flaming and give you no good feedback, there are times they give you good feedback. That's not hating, right? Fred's talking a little bit about this. That's just constructive feedback. there are times you need to fix things. There are times you need to speed up your podcast. There are times you need to not be so whatever you're doing that they're talking about in their comments.
Yeah,
And so take them and change them, you know?
Yeah, I had somebody send me an email that said, "Hey Dave, I just discovered your podcast." I had I think he went the gamut. I think he found Cliff and then found Daniel, which led him to Ray, which led him to me. Somehow, like, he ping-ponged around and said, "I just want to let you know yours is the worst website." And I went, "Yeah, okay." So I'm like, "Hey, thank you for the feedback. When can we chat? I'm going to be in the car for the next couple hours. Can we sit down and talk sometime?" So I was actually able to get him on Skype, and I think he said yours is the worst or something like that. And so I was thinking it was like, "You suck, you're horrible, blah, 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 your show's," and I get him on Skype. He's like, "Oh, I love your show. It's awesome." He goes, when you compare websites, yours is kind of bland. And I'm like, "Oh, whoo, yes, I totally agree." I said, I said, number one, Daniel used to do website design. He still can. It's not like his main gig. And I told him, I said, "Go look at oncepodcast.com. I said, "That is an awesome looking site." Ray's over at Podcasters Roundtable has a lot of white space on it. I said, "Yeah, I think I'm a victim of front page creep." I've thought about redesigning my logo numerous times because it's so just 2D and it's, just blah.
2D's in,
Yeah, it's
right
flat now. I was ahead of my time.
Flat and 2D is back.
So sometimes, so that was a case where I got that email and I'm like, all right, well, let's see what let's go in with an open mind, kind of like what Fred was saying. Sometimes they got a good point. And that is one of the things I'm looking forward to is now that I've moved the School of Podcasting's membership site off of to another site, I have a lot more flexibility to what I can do on the front page. And so that is going to be coming in the future as well. But I just picked up Skype in this case and said, "Hey, let's."
That's a great way to slow down a flamer, by the way, is say you want to talk personally about this.
Oh yeah.
Because lots of people are really good at being email haters, right? But they hide behind the words in all caps and lots of exclamation points and long question marks. But you say, "Hey, you know what? I really value your feedback and I'd like to talk to you about this because this will be better than email." Like you said, in your case, one, they'll just disappear.
Yeah.
Or two, you can get some constructive feedback and email comes off so negative, right? It already has a negative tone, I think, natively built in. When we read emails, we take them negative before we take them positive.
Yep.
You have to work hard to be positive in an email. Just type a regular email out. People will take it negative almost every single time. So you've really got to work hard on that and those negative criticisms, take them for what they're worth. If you're asking for feedback and they're giving it to you, say, "Yeah, you know what? I've got," and Dave, in your case, you're kind of like, "Look, I'm doing the best I can with what I got. If you're not okay with that, sorry, but that's what I've got. These are the resources and the tools that I have."
Yeah, that was his whole point, was like, "Oh, no, I'm not talking about your show. I'm talking about your website." And he's like, and I'm rarely at your website because I subscribe to you in the podcast app. So, hey, we got a caller ending in 5502. What's your name and what's your question? You're on with Dave and Jim.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Jim. It's John Buchanan.
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
Good.
The question I have is, and I was just talking about this with other podcasters the other day. You were talking about how there's all these different businesses that are popping up now because of podcasting, editing, and now I find that I always say that editing services for podcasts now is almost like the lawn care service of the world for podcasting. Everybody's doing it. You can find there's thousands of them out there now. Not thousands, but a lot.
A lot.
Now, all of a sudden, I see a lot of, "I'll teach you how to podcast" people out there that have taken a podcast course, and now it's like a copy of a copy of a copy. And I guess my question is, as a podcast, because people are coming to you to kind of listen, and I know you have the School of Podcasting, but what do you say to podcasters that are trying to learn about not getting pulled into schools where the people that are teaching them are they've learned something and now they're just regurgitating it?
So what do I say to the person that wants to be a podcast coach? Or
No, no, not the coach, but the people that are out there. I mean, almost like setting the. I don't want to use the word trap, but what would you say to find a good podcasting
Right. Okay.
tutor?
Well, number one, do they have a podcast? Because I have seen people come out of radio, and not to bash all radio people, but I remember one guy came out. It's like, I've spent 10 years, with an AM radio show. I was blah blah blah, and he had no podcast. And I'm like, that's when I was like, podcasting is not radio, and radio is not podcasting. There's good content in there, but hold on a second, time out. So do they have a podcast? Can they explain it? Because it's one thing to understand it, but can you? I had a teacher in college that I was taking a micro programming class, and it was all about code. And this guy was absolutely brilliant, but could not bring it down remotely any levels so that we could understand it. So that's the other thing. How do you avoid the snake oil salesman? That's a good one.
It's really hard, Dave. There's no like clear cut way. I mean, you got to do your research on these people, and when you're talking about it and you're telling people, it's tough because the real snake oil, it looks the slickest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they spend an enormous amount of time on their outward presence as opposed to their content. I'm not saying their content's always bad, but they'll have some. If they're just regurgitating what they're hearing, they'll have good content, right? It's I think it's hard, and I think for us that have been doing this for a while, we get a little jealous when we see somebody pop up all of a sudden and they're like, oh, now I'm going to go teach people how to podcast. And by the way, I just started doing it, Dave. We've seen over the last year a bunch of people asking questions in forums who are supposed to be podcast experts, or they're at least teaching courses around podcasting, and that they're in the forums asking, hey, how do I do this? And you're like, aren't you supposed to be the expert on this kind of thing? Aren't you selling that? So that's tough, especially when we're doing that kind of stuff. So John, I get that. I don't know if there's a true way to combat it except just be better than them.
Well,
right?
I
just provide a better content.
Yeah, it's weird without throwing people under the bus. I had somebody ask me, I think it was last week, and they said, well, kind of like, what makes you apart? I said, well, it's kind of my job to know as much as I can about podcasting. And I said, this particular coach told all of his students for years, going against the people who make the product. In this case, it was Libsyn, to use files as download only. I said, and I've been telling people, don't do that, because the people at Libsyn said this is a bad idea. And I said, and now Spotify is in podcasting. They'll be increasing their footprint in podcasting as time goes on. I said, but if you follow that person's advice, who didn't listen to other people who said this is a bad idea, I said, you're kind of screwed right now. You've got to go back and do a lot of work. I said, so my goal was to find out what I feel is the best solution at the time. Listen to those, be open to listening to other people, I think is a key ingredient of any coach. I will be the first to say, I don't know everything about everything. So you got to be able to listen to those that do know, and then investigate that. That's the other thing I think I've started doing more this year, is I will take somebody's answer, but I will go back behind the scenes to make sure. And I try to make sure anytime I have an answer, I can say, here's why I think this. And I will point to something and say, because of that. So it's not just always my opinion. But it is tough because there are, I turn around, and my favorite thing is, I think I mentioned this maybe last week, the week before, some people are coming to me now saying, will you promote my podcasting school? And I'm like, you kind of do realize I'm your competition, right? And it's like, look, I'm all from a mentality of abundance, and there's plenty to go around. But on the other hand, I'm like, and they'll even say, I can't really give much back to you. And I'm kind of like, well, if you can come up with a win-win, I'll be more than happy to do that. But, I just kind of want to go, why don't you just sign up to be an affiliate for the School of Podcasting, and then you can make money when I make money? It's like, it's kind of weird like that. But there are, I think there were 3 in the last 2 weeks that I saw brand new, podcasting, whatever, PhD, coach, professor, school, university, whatever it was, and hey, come on into the pool. I did do, last night I was playing with Overcast. Is that the one? It's orange and white, and typed in the word podcaster or podcast, and was amazed at how many podcasts about podcasting that I was not aware of from like 2012 that basically never like came above the radar and had already quit. Like the one had one episode. Like they put out one and that was it. And I was like, wow, okay. But it's good.
Dave, let me say, John, don't you think though we're kind of on the bubble with this a little bit, and it's kind of a phase, and it will fade?
Yeah.
It's what scares me is I do editing for other podcasters. I do it, and I had someone that I was editing for yesterday, and we had a problem, and I had to get in the back end of her site, and she says to me, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to start selling podcasting courses." And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's okay. And Dave, like you said about as far as uploading your feed to Libsyn, that's how I was taught. I was taught just to go in and file for download and put your file in and click. And now I have to go back in and relearn everything from scratch. So, yeah, we're always learning. And I like the podcast community because, we get together, talk podcasting, and people help you out. But I just find that a lot of these schools are popping up and they're trying to make money in the podcasting realm. And I just don't think that, I have a problem with it, to be honest with you.
Well, when the whole Adello thing came out, that was one of the things that really bugged me about it is people were like, this is the way to podcast. And first of all, I want to go and, where's your podcast? What are you basing this on? And they were basing on the fact that Adello had a phenomenal affiliate program and you could make a bunch of cash by promoting that service. And it's, I was like, well, okay, and that to me is the epitome of a snake oil salesman. They're doing it.
You can do about it though, right, Dave? I mean, there isn't much you can do. No. They're going to do it. It's free market. They can make it happen. John, I totally get what you're talking about though. And especially in that editing space, because it is a little competitive. I mean, on your side too, that's going to drive down the cost of editing as more people come in to be competitive in that. How do you feel about, as an editor, have you felt a little price pressure?
I don't know. And to be honest with you, there's only so many hours in a day and you can only edit as a person. You can only edit so many podcasts. So, I'm not worried about it because there's, like you say, there's a ton of people out there that are podcasting that want to be able to change that. And they just want to give their content over for editing. So I'm not really worried about them driving the prices down. Again, like you say, you get what you pay for. So I just put out what I have and then people listen to that, what I can do. And that's fine. But as far as, there's tons of places to do it. Daryl Darnell does it, Podfly. I can't even think of them all, but there's a lot of them. And they all do good work. So I think there's more of that to go around, but you see the quality of it. You really don't see the quality of a podcast course until you're in it.
Yeah, I know. Right.
That's it.
Right on.
I'm reading a book now on word of mouth, yet another one, and they're mentioning about we live in a like a freebie kind of society or a free sample. When you go to the grocery store on Saturday, and would you like to try this little piece of pizza? And here's a little piece of try our mustard. And we kind of live in a sampling society, they were saying. And I was like, I probably should come up with some sort of free sample. Here, take 3, here's 3 tutorials from the school of podcasting for free. Just to let people, because like you said, you don't know if it's good. I can tell you all day long, if you come to the school of podcasting, you don't like it, just let me know anytime within the first 30 days, you get your money back, no questions asked. But some people still want to touch it and smell it and, sniff it before they sign up for it. So, but yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Great talking to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I had somebody once talk me off the ledge because it was literally, there were like 3 or 4 that had come in to, like schools had come into, podcast schools and courses and things like that. And I was like, oh man. And they're like, and I started to kind of like really focus on what they were doing. One of my friends said, dude, you're Dave Jackson. Why are you worried about this? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you're Dave Jackson. And I'm like, to me, that means nothing. He goes, no, dude, you're like, and he starts like talking me up and I'm like, I don't see myself that way. And he's like, no, he's like, this is like, I don't know, Judas Priest worried about some garage band, it's like.
Dave, you make a great point there. And I think Randy Cantrell talked with me about this off air one time. Randy and I were talking, and when you're in that space, like you don't hear the best. And this is, I think, what you're saying. You don't hear the best talking about their competition. They just talk about what they do. And I think sometimes we get insecure in those areas
yeah.
and we start talking about the competition. We just give it credence. And so, I was this week, Michael Hyatt, or last week, Michael Hyatt was on Pat Flynn's StrengthsFinder, which is really cool. That's
Yeah.
the product we sell at Gallup. And I was listening to that podcast, and Pat Flynn and Michael Hyatt, they don't talk about they are pushing. Oh, yay! Dave got the book. I'm glad you
Thank
got
you,
it.
by the way. I was
You're
gonna say.
welcome. You're welcome. And did you take it yet?
No, I was like,
Okay. No, you've
I-
been busy. You've
yeah.
been busy. Take it, and we'll talk about it on the show at some
Yeah.
point. But those guys, especially like Pat Flynn, not really worried about the competition. He's just pushing forward. So
Right.
I think there's a lesson in that. It's like, let the competition be the competition. If they're going to make it, they're going to drop out. If they're going to make it, they're going to make it. If not, they're going to drop out. Your job is to be better than them.
Yeah.
That's so focus on that, and don't give them, in pure competition, don't give them advertising by talking about them.
Yeah.
Dave, you're in a little bit of a pickle that way because you talk about your competition all the time, but you brought that in a spirit of, coopetition
Yeah.
and talking about those things. So that's a little dicey in that. But, if you're going to criticize these snake oil salesmen, don't talk about them.
Yeah, I used to, anytime I saw a podcast about podcasting, I almost always like brought them on my show. I kind of don't do that anymore because there's just so many. It's like every show would be like,
Yeah.
here's another podcast about podcasting. So, and the other thing, going back to this kind of all ties in today, the whole hater thing. I was so happy. I can still say nobody has asked for a refund from the School of Podcasting in the 10 years that I've been doing it. I have had somebody ask for the money back for my podcasting in 6 weeks course that I used to do. And it was interesting because, and this is where you kind of just got to let it go sometimes. Had a guy sign up. He went through, I think, all 6 weeks and then asked for a refund. And I'm like, and I always say, if you have any questions, no questions asked. And I said, I am going to ask one question. And I said, what was the deal? And he said, well, I just took Cliff's A to Z class. And then he took my class, and his complaint was, I didn't learn anything new. And I'm like, well, they're both kind of like how to get your podcast off the ground. I don't know really what he thought I was going to teach him, because I'm teaching him about WordPress and RSS feeds and album art and naming your show and everything else. I just, saved him, probably $2,500. And so he said he didn't think he learned anything new. And I went, okay. And then I gave him his money back. I said, I do have, if you could, one more question out the door. What could I have done to make it better? What were you expecting to hear? Because maybe that's another product or something like that. He never answered. I would have loved to just, bug him to death. Seriously, what were you looking for? But he wanted his money back. He wasn't happy. And, I asked and so you try to make a bad situation as pleasant as you can, right? It's like, hey, thank you. I'm sorry, that it didn't fit what you were looking for. There was a part of me that I wanted to go, what were you thinking? It's the same class with a different name. So, that case like that, I was like, all right, well, here's your money. Sorry, it didn't suit you. I asked, he didn't answer, and you just kind of go, all right, well, I guess he's not, he's got his money, he's happy, and he's on his way. So,
Yeah.
It's
It's a tough deal. No matter how you slice it, keep your head on, keep it cool, be professional, along
That's
those
it.
lines. Dan Kramer had sent something in chat about, he wishes he had, and I forget how he phrased it, but kind of a side gig of doing some podcast consulting. I do a couple of those. I don't talk about them a lot. Just some friends of mine that I met through the podcast that said, hey, I wanted to do a podcast. And I said, well, let me just help you get started. And I've ended up being their audio editor in the process, and I help them with all the mechanics of it. And I charge a little bit for it. And I've learned a lot through it, doing it. And so let me encourage you in your networks, just if you've got people who are starting to do podcasting and they need audio help or some of those kinds of things, and they don't want to do it themselves, volunteer to do it for them. I mean, Dave, that's not really a space you're in. They want to help starting their own podcast, and they want to do all the work themselves. Send them over to the School of Podcasting, and make sure you get that. By the way, if you're referring people to Dave, you should have an affiliate link with Dave, and you've got that available, right, Dave? If people
schoolofpodcasting.com/partners.
Take money from Dave Jackson, right? Do it. He's got an affiliate link that will do that, and he'd want you to use it. But lots of people need help getting started on those things, and for me, it was just a matter of helping them get the audio right and the mechanics of it together and the right kind of equipment and those kinds of things. So it's easy to do. Anybody can do it, and you can do it. You help your friends.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And that's where, the audio editing, podcast consulting, if you can, if you got people asking you, by all means. If, last week's show, we had Gwen call in, and I had a couple of people email said, man, she had lots of questions. And I just said, welcome to my world. I mean, that's me on a daily basis.
Train wreck.
Yeah.
You got so many questions coming all at the same time.
Yeah. And I just went, so if you want to be a podcast consultant, go listen to last week's episode once I publish it, of course. And, that's kind of what you're walking into. And it is fun. She's, I did an article in Pottertainment magazine a while ago where it was the instead of the three bears, right? One was too hot, one was too cold, and one was just right. She's a little too hot. She's ready to go right now, but you need to kind of go, let's get the plan. What are we doing for that? And then you have the person that's too cold. It's like, well, they're planning to plan about the plan so they can plan the plan, and then you have the person that's got the right, they're excited, they are passionate, they've got their step-by-step what they're going to be going through. So yeah, she was a lot of fun last week. So it's always fun when and you run into those people on a regular basis, and it's great because I love the passion.
It's good to see the passion. Yeah, I was just going to say, great. Yeah. The passion is awesome. You're just like, oh, I want to start a new podcast now.
Yeah.
So
hey, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Is it MVP?
MVP for Microsoft? Yeah, yeah. I'm a Windows MVP.
Yeah, we're going to take a minor break, but it still kind of ties into podcasting.
I think so.
Windows 10 is coming out when?
Yeah, so Windows 10 officially will be released July 29th. So it's coming up. Microsoft has been the most aggressive they've ever been in their beta program about letting people test Windows 10 openly, and they've got millions of people testing this new version of Windows 10. And it's good that they do, because they are making a gigantic departure from Windows 8. So if you've heard a lot of bad things about Windows 8, most of them are true, by the way. Although I'm running Windows 8 on my studio PC today, the 8.1 update, and it's really just like Windows 7 now. So there's no reason to be afraid of Windows 8 from that standpoint. But that being said, Windows 10 is coming and to correct a lot of the problems the perception problems that they had with Windows 10. My recommendation for podcasters, because I don't want to talk about it from a feature set or whether Mac is better than PC. I'm not interested in doing that. All I'm saying is, if you're a Windows guy, in other words, if your studio PCs are running Windows 10 is coming whether you like it or not. Now, they're not going to force you to upgrade. You can stay where you're at. You can be fine. In fact, my recommendation would be, on July 29th, they're going to ask a lot of people, and for the first year, you're going to get Windows 10 for free. So if you think you're going to go this route and you've got a license, a legit copy of Windows 7, Windows 8, whatever, you're going to be able to upgrade to Windows 10 for free, which is going to be great. But don't do it on day one. Okay, as podcasters, don't do that. Okay, that's a bad idea. There's going to be a lot of bugs. They are breaking things and fixing them fast. That's their mantra right now. And so if you like that kind of stuff, by all means, grab an extra piece of hardware. And right now, actually, the latest version, 10,130, that just came out is the most stable build yet, and you get a really cool look at the future of Windows that's coming in. And it's available for free. I would install it on another piece of hardware. If you have an extra PC laying around that can support it, I would do that and bring it up and get a good look at it. But please do not upgrade your studio. Do not upgrade your equipment just yet. I think let's get into the fall. That free upgrade is going to go for a while. Let's get into the fall. Windows needs to get stable upon release, and then you can upgrade if you want to do it. There's some features coming. Not for the podcaster, there's nothing new coming that is really going to benefit you from a podcasting standpoint. Everything still runs. Audacity will run. You can still run Spreaker. You can still run Mixler. All those apps are still going to work. You're going to be able to, run all the Office stuff. There's some cool stuff coming up from a tablet perspective, or the way it handles memory or the way it does storage. I mean, there's some cool things coming up with that. But for the most part, for us podcasters, really not a lot there that you're going to want to say, oh, I need to go to Windows 10 to get this. So you've been warned from a Microsoft guy. Do not upgrade on July 29th unless you know what you're doing at this point. And by all means, if you can get an extra PC and get that on there and give it a try, and try it in your system, right? Try it in your workflow before you get going. That's the best possible scenario that you can have going forward. So that'd be my recommendation with Windows 10. You can reserve it now, which is interesting. Microsoft has had this, they put a little icon now that will show up in the in the taskbar, the tool tray down on the right-hand side, and you can reserve your copy. Well, that's like reserving a table at a restaurant that has an infinite amount of tables, right? What does that mean? So you can do that if you want. And basically, they're going to download the bits to you a little bit early so that on the 29th, you have them available and you can turn it on and go on the 29th. Again, not recommended from this stand. Hear it from me. Not because it's going to be bad. It's going to be cool. I just think there's going to be some problems with it that day one adopters, if you're not a tech guy, there's going to be some frustrations with day one adopters that you're not going to be ready for. And I just don't want anybody to come back to say, oh, Microsoft did it again. No, we're warning you. Don't do it, right? Give it some time. Let's get into the fall a little bit, August, September, October. And again, anytime there's a major upgrade to anything in your workflow, you should be doing it on a separate piece of equipment and testing it before you even push it live into production. So that's what should happen anyways, Dave. So that's coming up. Just want to warn the podcasters.
And I was looking for it while you were talking. Ken Blanchard had sent in, and I don't know how he sent it in because there was no subject and it was just an email. Like he didn't send it in via SpeakPipe. And I'm going to try to paraphrase his question. His question was, he's got his new Blanchard Outdoors show, and Ken Blanchard, Black Man with a Gun, hilarious guy, super nice guy. And he was saying, should I send people to iTunes? Should I send people to Stitcher? Which like subscription should I send people to? And I said, why not use something like a Pretty Link and send them to, BlanchardOutdoors.com/subscribe, where people can find the iTunes link, the, Stitcher link, or the subscribe an Android link. Now, I know that's, we're having more and more people jump onto Todd's little tool there.
That's great. They should.
And, I thought that's a pretty decent way of doing that, because it is hard now as more and more things come out. You want to have everybody on any way they want to subscribe. Please subscribe. And I'm like, why not make one website with all the links? And then the other thing is have directions, because it's one thing. I mean, we're so knee deep into the woods. We can subscribe to anything, anytime, anywhere. Somebody new, you might want to say, open up the app, click here, search here, take some screenshots. If you don't know on an iPhone to take a screenshot, hold down, what is the front button called? The front button?
I don't know what they call it.
Yeah, the little round thingy
I'm
on the
Windows
front.
guy, Dave. You're asking me, this is like Satan. It's a Satan box is what you're talking about.
If you hold down the button on the front and push your on-off button, it will take a screenshot. So it's really easy to, and then from there, you just email yourself the photo, and you can then put that into WordPress and that whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So little instructions are great, right?
Yeah.
Those are helpful.
Yeah. So instead of trying to send everybody everywhere, because that way it's easy. Anybody asks you anywhere, you're just like, yeah, go to just, whatever your website is, /subscribe or /iTunes or you could have, different pages for each people. That way, instead of having one really long page, you could have, here's how to subscribe in iTunes, here's how to subscribe in Stitcher and things of that nature.
Let me answer a couple questions in chat here around Windows 10. So, Dan, let's see. Hold on. Let me find these here. So, a lot of people are saying that's why I switched over to Mac. Not bad. By the way, these are just platforms at this point, and if you like Mac, go with Mac. You come a whole different set of problems, right? You don't get options. You buy what they give you. You might have 3 PCs. You get the option 2, and if you like that ecosystem and you want to go with Mac, then that's great. And if it works for you, use it. On the Windows 10 side with the new browser that's coming out, so Project Spartan is the name of it, but it will be called Edge. That will be the official name of it, replacing Internet Explorer. Notice they both start with an E, right? So not right now. It's at 0.15. It's at the .15 release. It's not even a 1 version yet. Right, so don't use it. It does have an interesting feature, especially on touch devices, which the Macs don't have, except for an iPad. But that's not a real PC. You can write on the you can open up a browser window, write on it, and then send it to somebody. So say you want to show somebody something. Hey, it needs to be this. You can go there with your finger, draw a circle around it, or arrows, or whatever, and then hit share. It takes a copy of the browser and sends it to that person. A really nice feature, but man, it's early. So Project Spartan, not ready for prime time. I guess that's called the home button, by the way, on the iPhone there,
Thank
Dave.
you.
And Jeff, yes, I do carry an iPhone as my daily driver. I was just kind of making a joke with Dave there. So it's the new browser's not ready for prime time. You know, again, don't use it yet. It's still got a ways to go, but I like it so far. I've been using it. I have it on I have a Microsoft Surface, Surface Pro 3, and this has been the most stable build so far. So I'm liking testing it and using it. It seems to be almost ready for some things, but we still got a ways to go. IE will no longer be developed. So if you're,
Wow,
yeah, it's done.
It's weird to think because back in the day, right? Microsoft got sued because they had a
market share.
They had a monopoly with Internet back in the days of Netscape.
Well, hey, Liz, there's going to come a day, right, where the iPhone becomes the attack surface of choice, and Apple will have all the same problems and actually maybe not. It's going to be Android. There's been a lot of talk, and I was listening to Mike Dell this week talking about Android. Hey, you need to pay attention to Android. By the way, Android people don't buy anything. So, Mike, I'm not so sure we need to pay much. If you're looking for paying customers, Android customers don't buy anything. But that being said, Android will probably be the new attack surface of the future. So I think 10 years from now, we'll be saying the same thing about Android that we're saying about Windows right now. It's vulnerable, and Google's not doing enough development on it because there's 2 billion devices out there with Android on them, and it's growing rapidly. I mean, Microsoft got to 1.5 billion with Windows, and it kind of stabilized at that point. It's growing, but not that much. Android is just starting to grow. So I think we're going to continue to see gigantic. Well, and there's only 7 billion people on the planet. So I guess we can't go too much beyond that unless we're talking about everybody carrying 2 or 3 devices. But I think we'll be talking about Android the way that we talk about Windows here in the next 5 to 6 years. It's just not. It's just going to happen.
Well, it's always interesting to see, technology change over the years and that whole 9 yards. I'm seeing in the chat room, they're saying I don't have the current. I don't think that's true. I will.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
The current.
AskThePodcastCoach.com/live.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah, it's in the chat room's there. Just pop it out. Pop
yes.
that chat room out. I think that's what he's talking about. The current hangout.
Yeah, I just updated.
No, you don't, Dave. It says 523. Wonder if people are listening to our May 23rd episode. They can't be because they've been responding.
I have. Okay, because I just updated the website again, so if you refresh it, it should be there. But speaking of technology, I was playing with this Overcast last night. They have a really interesting feature that if you're listening to a show, you can share it on Twitter, etc., but you can also share it at the current time, which is kind of a clamor kind of thing. So if you hear something like, oh, this is cool, instead of saying, hey, at the 18-minute mark, go listen to this, you just click that. And I guess Overcast has their own, I know they have their own kind of directory, but they also, from what I understand, and I need to dive into this, Overcast, you can listen to your podcast subscriptions online. It's kind of like iTunes. You have you can sync iTunes with your phone. I've never done that, but this you can actually use the app, and then wherever you're at, if you're not somewhere where your phone is, maybe you're listening at work, you can actually go to Overcast, sign into your Overcast account, and there's all your subscriptions, and you can listen on the web. So it's kind of like Stitcher, I guess, in that aspect. But I thought it was interesting because then every episode, it's still pulling. They're not hosting your file, but they have all the information from your RSS feed. And they have the ability now to link to a specific time. So that seems to be like the new cool tool is this time linking where people can click on that.
To the specific time, right?
Yeah.
Say, hey, I want you to listen right at this moment. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I'm anxious for Clamor to get a better interface because right now it's just in seconds. So you kind of have to think, okay, I got to multiply that times 60 and carry the 1. And, you're just, it's a little harder. Parviz said they're gonna fix that coming up. I had him on my show a couple weeks ago. The other cool little Easter egg they've been put in there, I don't think anybody really uses this. There's messaging inside of Clamor, so you can message people in there. So that's that part. I was like, oh, I had no idea this was in here. So it's pretty cool.
The thing that's killing me with Clamor is I'm always like, somebody will have like the perfect clip, like here it is, the perfect clip, and I want to get rid of that at the end, and trying to back up a second. I must have spent a minute and a half yesterday, and I finally was like, screw it, post it. And I was just like, it's the perfectionist in me that hates having that. I want to get the maximum impact from the Clamor, and I got to email those guys and go, you got to come up with something, because I was really ready to just punch my phone. But hey, we got a caller calling in here, ending in 7825. You're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question?
Hey, Dave and Jim, this is Michael Ray. How you doing?
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. I had a couple questions. One was about Twitter. I know if you're an email and you're trying to send an email out to, like, say, an ADHD group or something, and you got 10 people in there, and bam, you can send it all out. Can you do that with Twitter? I did not know. And also on WordPress, my website, I got a Skype button, and I'm trying to figure out how, if somebody pushes that Skype button, it will go to my Skype. Two things I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, with the first one, the way Twitter works, people that follow you will get your tweets, assuming they're on Twitter at that point. Twitter's kind of an odd little beast, because so many people are tweeting so fast that, you know, they can kind of go back and look at your stuff if they want to. But in terms of comparing Twitter to email, it is so apples and oranges, because an email is there for you to see whenever you want. And I guess in theory, they could go back to your Twitter page and see your previous tweets, but it's not like I want to tweet. Well, I guess you could direct tweet a bunch of people, but it's not really like a list kind of thing. It's usually you just blast it and whoever's following you gets it. Jim, any other insights on Twitter?
Yeah, no, right on. I would never anticipate having communication with people that would be consistent on Twitter. It's just like if they happen to see it. Now, I'm surprised. A lot more people see my tweets than I see theirs. So I think I've subscribed to too many people, or I follow too many people, and so you have to be careful of that too. I think Twitter's benefit is search. So hashtags are really what it is, and if people are following those kinds of hashtags, I definitely would see. Oftentimes, I tweet with key hashtags that get picked up by people who are auto following certain hashtags for retweets. So that's an advantage on Twitter to help get it out. But it is definitely, Twitter's the shotgun of communication, and it's a really short shotgun, right? I mean, that blast radio or radius is gigantic. So I would never bank on Twitter for anything. Anything you get out of Twitter, I think, is gravy.
Yeah, and then in terms of Skype, let's go back. Let's backtrack a second. Why are you putting a Skype button on your website?
Well, I was thinking that maybe, because all your social media buttons up there, I thought, well, if they hit that Skype button, I'm thinking that maybe they can go to my Skype and start calling, or am I wrong?
If you have a Skype account that gets voicemail, which I think they kind of all do, I'd have to think about that a second.
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah, so it would basically be a way to get voicemail.
I never thought about doing it that way, where you basically Michael, they would need to get accepted into your contact list before they could communicate with you. So you could put your Skype ID out there. They would need to send a contact request. You would have to accept it. Then they could call you at that point. So that's a little clunky. Clunky.
Yeah, I would go more with a speak pipe kind of thing, because they can click on that and they're good to go. I
got the speak pipe on there. I kind of messed it up and got to redo it, but I got it on.
Yeah, and then you can always
speak pipe does work good.
You can always use something like Google Voice or podcastvoicemail.com to if you want to get a phone number, and then so if somebody's on their phone and you make that. Let me think about that. I think most phones now, if they see a phone number, they're clickable. At least I know on the iPhone it is, which makes it easy to call.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure Skype would be my recommended choice of getting feedback, because it's like Jim said, you got to go through all those hoops you got to be on my list and their list and approve that and things like that. So I know Skype has you can have a Skype in number, but If I'm going to have a Skype in number, I'll just go get a,
Just use Google Plus.
yeah, Google Voice.
Cheaper.
and-
$3.99 on Skype, by the way. If you do want minutes in the US, $3.99 gets you kind of unlimited US numbers and a phone number to use. So I just purchased that the other day. Actually, I purchased it, Dave, to do the show 4 weeks ago when I hosted the show. I used Skype to call in to Blog Talk Radio, and then I used Skype as one of my inputs, and I ran that with a virtual audio cable. But so that's not terrible. $3 if you want to get that Skype number, and so yeah, that's kind of how Skype works.
And I do want to apologize to you, Jim.
For what?
Okay.
You still there?
Yeah.
Well, I was playing. You remember you yesterday on Periscope? You was talking about my Mario Kart and all that. So I went and I was playing Mario Kart again, and I on Periscope. I thought I'd do it again. I said I'm gonna do this one here for Jim. This is for Jim, and I lost miserably. So.
Oh, man, if you're going to play Mario Kart on Periscope, you should win every time. That's my expectation, Michael. So you better step up. You better step up your game.
I hammed it up real good. But man, I lost so bad. It was horrible. But like I said before, it's a lot of fun. So if you got Periscope at home, it ain't bad. But on the road, it can eat that data up big time,
Yeah.
But,
yeah. No, for sure. Dave, I have a great Periscope story, by the way. So, but yeah, no, it's good stuff, Michael. Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it. Good hearing from you.
No problem. You guys take care. Thanks,
All right,
man. Appreciate everything you guys do.
All right,
You bet, man.
take care. I did have a good.
You bet.
I did have a question here. This was from Paul Phillips. I got this last night. I'm going to start a podcast soon, but I'm struggling with a name for the podcast. My wife and I have started a subscription box. I'm going to sneeze sometime in the next 10 seconds, just so you know.
Mute it.
My wife and I have started a subscription box service with Kentucky products delivered monthly, and I've gotten the chance to meet some of the people behind the products that we are curating in our box. The cool thing is it seems like everyone has a story, and I want to share those through a podcast. So I have seen your advice to keep it straightforward but catchy. All I can come up with is Bluegrass Business or Kentucky Business. This covers the straightforward part, but it seems kind of blah to me. Am I overthinking this? Any advice? And I'll let you want to take a stab at this one?
On the name, huh?
And I was like, it's a business monthly, sign up and every month we'll send you a box of stuff from Kentucky.
Yeah.
But what do I call my
There's
podcast?
a service that does that already. So I would make sure, you can get it's women's clothing and
There's a bunch of them
jewelry. There's stuff like that. So be careful not to name it that, because that's already happening. I would say this is a perfect, Dave. You give some good advice of ask the people around you and say, hey, I was thinking of doing this. What would you call it? And just write it down, right? Top of mind responses, and just see what they say. And then I would aggregate those together in maybe no more than 3 words on that. So maybe 4 at the most, and run with it. That's what I don't have any ideas on there. I don't understand that business model, but I mean, I do. But.
Yeah, it's that exactly. I always say, come up with a name, say it to people like, hey, I'm going to call a podcast Bluegrass Business. What do you think it's about? And then see if
that doesn't do it, right? Bluegrass, what? Okay, I understand it's Bluegrass Business, but that doesn't mean anything. Neither does Kentucky Business, by the way.
Yeah, because bluegrass could be music.
Right.
Right. You got a bunch of and if you say Kentucky Business, now you've now on one hand, right? If you go super niche, that's people in Kentucky are going to go, hey, they're talking about me. But on the other hand, if you ever want to venture out and talk about West Virginia business, well, now you're stuck because you're doing Kentucky business. So
and what are the items that are in these boxes?
He doesn't say. It's products from Kentucky.
Yeah. And
I was like, yeah,
there's something creative in there somewhere.
Yeah. I'm like,
so think about that for a while.
Yeah, that would be me. I think that would be my advice. Number one, the world has waited however long for your podcast this far. So many people are like, oh, I got to come up with a name by next week. And I'm like, or the world blows up. You've waited 6 years so far. Why is all of a sudden you have to have this just now? And I love, deadlines because they do give you that sense of urgency, but I've seen so many people make really bad decisions because it's got to be out next week. So, but,
Kim says Bluegrass Monthly. That doesn't, Bluegrass Box or Bluegrass or Kentucky Blue. I don't know.
Yeah, because then it sounds like a grass, right?
No,
Isn't there a
I
Kentucky
know.
bluegrass?
Bluegrass is a great name, though. I mean, that's
Yeah.
got such good connotation to it. If you can take advantage of that always, I think for me, anyways, good feelings. Like you think of Kentucky bluegrass, and you think
Right.
of big green open fields and horses and Kentucky rolling hills and that kind of deal. So,
Well, and then you hear banjo music in your head, and there is no such thing as like you can't sing the blues on a banjo. Like it's like ding 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 ding. It's like oh death and grief and sorrow and murder. It just doesn't work. So thank you, Steve Martin, for that joke. By the way, okay, take credit for that.
that's good. That's very good.
You said you had a Periscope story.
Yeah, maybe we can wrap it up with a Periscope. And you know, if you haven't used Meerkat or Periscope yet, they're both now available both on the Android and iPhone platforms. They were on each other for a while and moving around, but they're available on both now, so you can try them out. Basically, one-way instant video on the phone, wherever you're at, as long as you have a connection, and you can blast your video to the world, and people can watch it on the world. And you're taking advantage of some great cameras. If we think about the Galaxy S5 or 6, or we think about the Note 4, we think about the iPhone 6, even the iPhone 5. They've got great cameras on them, and so you get really good quality. Ray has been taking advantage of Periscope over the last couple of weeks, and he's done some unboxings. And we found one of the things we did this week. Mike Uyghur and myself on Home Gadget Geeks, we're live on Thursday nights. We I should say at theaverageguy.tv/live to be just official there. But what we've been doing is going pre-show with Periscope and just letting people kind of watch us set up as we're getting ready for the podcast and having a conversation with them. And this week we actually had, so we tried we tried like Home Gadget Geeks pre-show. Nobody joined that, right? It was not, we got a couple people and they were gone the second they got there. We put monkeys with microphones, right? Holy cow. We got 5 or 6 people to join right away. I think at one point we peaked at about 25. And everybody was like, where's the monkeys? Where's the monkeys? And so Mike drew a picture of a monkey. It looked more like a bear, unfortunately. So we called it the bear monkey. And then he brought in he had a turkey replica, a rubber, not a rubber chicken, but a rubber turkey. He brought that in. We were just having kind of fun with it. And there's a feature where you can tap on the screen and the hearts, and you get points for the hearts and whatever on Periscope. We did a little race to see who could get the most hearts in the thing. And we really created this fun engagement. And then we're like, hey, we got to go now because we're going live at
nice.
Gadget Geeks, right? Why don't you come over and join us? And we had 2 people, one local to Omaha, one in Wales, jump in our chat room, and one stayed through the whole podcast. The one in Wales had to go to bed because it was really late.
Right. So you're your own lead-in. Basically.
Yeah, it was actually a really cool way to make engagement with an audience that, and one of the gals, Betsy, who was from Omaha, she doesn't live very far from me, but I never would have connected with her if we hadn't gone out on Periscope. And Periscope's now got a feature where it shows you connections that are local.
Oh.
And so a good way to we've always been struggling. How are we going to use Periscope? How are we going to use Meerkat? I mean, it was like the discussion we had 8 years ago when Twitter came out, and everybody was like, seriously, 140 characters? This is the internet, for God's sakes. We can push as much stuff as we want. Why would you limit it to 140 characters? Same thing with Clamor. Why would you limit it to 18 seconds? I think it's going to take time for like Clamor and Periscope for people to kind of find that niche and how it works. We might be onto something with this, using it in a pre-show kind of scenario to draw people in. So it was kind of fun. I mean, that was one of those things I'm like, oh, hey, wait a minute. If we did this every week and we always talk about gaining listeners, one listener at a time.
Yep.
This is one of those ways to do it. So if you haven't tried it out yet, Periscope, Meerkat, I'm finding better luck on Periscope than I am on Meerkat, but it just kind of depends on the networks that you're in.
Well, isn't Periscope the one that's owned by Twitter?
Twitter does own Periscope. Yeah, they bought that. Meerkat's independent. Meerkat, though, launched at South by Southwest and got a lot of traction early on. So
I keep hearing rumors that Meerkat's going to get purchased by Facebook. I'm like,
yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I would not doubt it. But kind of fun. One of the things I've done is I've taken a boom arm, right? So this is one of those newer 15. I showed this on the show last time, and I put I've used one of those Whiz Gear magnetic mounts, and I put it on there. It's great for Periscope. So
awesome.
It's you saw how fast I pulled that out, right? Bam.
That's it. You're good to go. Awesome. Well, hey, we'll go ahead and start
Steve
start
Martin
fi-
quotes, by the way,
it's-
going on in chat right
He's another guy that, like, you know, he'd been doing stand up for so long he quit, but I'm like, he and Eddie Murphy were awesome at stand up, and you know, just weird, wacky stuff. And Steve Martin, man,
Yeah,
it's
John.
and just-
John
Good.
says in the chat, if you don't come up with a name right away, no one will punch you in the face.
yes, I'm waiting for my shirt to show up. I ordered mine from Ryan, so it should be here
I need to get one of those.
in a couple days or so. We will have a brief after show today because I'm having Elsie and Jessica, or I'm interviewing them at noon, and you know, maybe I'll work with the chat room and you guys. We can make sure we got some decent questions ready for these folks. But I want to say thanks to the chat room. I should mention that if you want to join the School of Podcasting, use the coupon code ASK20 to save on your first month. We are here every Saturday at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. You can find Jim over at theaverageguy.tv, and you can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. And if I think I already said this, every Saturday, askthepodcastcoach.com/live. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. God bless the mute button, right? Are you dying over there, buddy?
Holy cow.
Something went down the wrong way?
Totally choked. Did you catch the first part of that when I was?
No, I just looked
Okay,
up and you're bent over, and I'm like, okay. So I'm going to
Yowza. I don't know what I did, but yeah. Let's see. So what mount? Oh, I used a WizGear mount, WIZGEAR. You can find that on Amazon. Just use Dave's Amazon affiliate link for it. And a WizGear, they're $10. Don't spend any more than that. I bought 3 of them since, and it's a it's the one that's designed for your car's the vents. So it goes in, it's got 2 different settings. It's got a wide one and a narrow one. And they're super versatile and they spin a little bit. That's the best $10 I ever spent. So WizGear magnetic mount. If you need the link, head over to theaverageguy.tv/gear. And I just did a post on it and it's listed there. So if you want to look at that, that's the mount I used. One of the things I did notice, one of the ones I bought, supposed to be a little resistor in there that keeps that thing from just spinning around too much on the phone. And I've already, on the one in my car, that's loosened up quite a bit. And so it spins kind of freely. And the phone sits in the vent, so it doesn't move around too much. But for $10, it's kind of, maybe maybe that wasn't the greatest quality. I haven't had the problem here with that. That vent gear actually goes nicely on a microphone holder. So you can see here, I've just got that attached right to the vent gear. Well, the things in the way. It's hard to show. So yeah, that's the WizGear.
Yeah, I was looking at the chat room to see if we had any females in the chat room, because I'm having Elsie and Jessica on. I listened to their show, and it's kind of interesting because I know they're not a lot, but on occasion they're like, we're not man bashing. And to me, when I hear an athlete say it's not about the money, it's about the money. So when you say I'm not man bashing, I kind of go, if you have to say that, you probably maybe, it's one of those things. It's a gray area maybe. So I do think they're a great example of 2 completely different people. Like Jessica is kind of assertive and very not afraid. She's a very confident person. And where Elsie is from the yoga world. So she's very, stay calm, breathe, that whole 9 yards. So I'm like, how did you guys find each other? But yet they love podcasting. The one thing I want to ask them about is snarkiness in the podcast community. I often hear that it's the same old people and people will come in and kind of, and I always hear, the people that have been around forever come in and they just bark their answers at people. And I'm like, do I bark answers at people? I'm like, is it me or do I see people that? And I was going to throw that out to you guys. I'm like, I've seen, it's hard not to be snarky when you have somebody that says, what's the best microphone for podcast? You just kind of want to go, really? You couldn't have searched the group or, And I thought about it. It did make me, it's hard not to go, I forget what it was in the Facebook group today. Somebody asked somebody and said, don't reply until you Google that or something like that. And I was like, well, that's kind of snarky. But it was a fairly simple question, but that's the whole point. It's like, hey, I'm new. That's why I'm asking you. I'm new to the thing. And I don't know. I don't really see it as snarky, but on the other hand, I'm not on the other end of the snarkiness. So
it's hard. We get in these ecosystems, we get in these communities, and the community kind of agrees upon a certain set of standards or a certain set of methodologies. And so like in our community, in this community that we have here, Libsyn and Blueberry are kind of the standard. Mm-hmm. And if somebody says something else that's not them, immediately it gets downgraded as a second-class citizen, right? And we just come with those biases. It just happens, right? Yeah. And when there are other communities where that may not be true, and and so if somebody came up and had a different microphone, we'd be like, why would you want to look at a different microphone? The ATR 2100 works just fine, right? Well, it does, but maybe this other one. So that's one of the things I think, as the way our brain works, is we like to simplify. We cannot handle just an enormous amount of options. And with the human brain, options equal confusion. And so we try to simplify things down into kind of these sets of standards. And that can be dangerous in communities sometimes, because you get these agreed upon standards. And if somebody questions the status quo, I think this was on the latest Podcasters Roundtable, which, by the way, I didn't think you guys ever got to questioning the status quo.
No, I listened back to it either. And I'm like, I was kind of like
super hard. That's a super hard question, right? You need it. By the way, it was all people in the community who all agree upon, for the most part. And this is Ray's trying to do this different, where he's trying to get people to argue with each other, and that's just hard because we get a little homogenized in our community. We start agreeing. For the reason we're in the community is because we agree with everything, for the most part, that people say, and so it just gets difficult to get dissent going, because there's such a strong, I think your reaction to Adello was one of those. I think they're genuinely trying, right? But they were a new player in the space. I think you treat SoundCloud that way sometimes. They have always been a second-class citizen for you, Dave. And I think no matter what SoundCloud does, you will really never give them any credibility or any as being a legitimate podcasting platform, just because the community has always seen SoundCloud as kind of like, And the funny thing is, I hear other podcasters saying the exact same things they hear from you, which is when we repeat these things, which one of them, Todd, I think, said, they're in round D of, well, I've heard 3 podcasters say that. They don't even know what that means, right? They're just spouting the same things that they're hearing from other podcasts. So when we get community speak going on, right, which is what I think that is, when we get this community speak going on, it's really hard. And so we get a little impatient when it's like, why are you asking about a microphone again? Haven't we done the 2100s enough? Kind of thing. I think it's very easy for that to happen. In some communities, SoundCloud is gold, right? That's the gold standard.
Yeah, I know some people, they just love it. And I'm like, well,
and it works.
Yeah, it's like if they would quit changing my file name and mess with
but some people don't care about that, right? Exactly. You come at it from a different perspective that to some people, that just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, they've got a really sweet player, which, by the way, they do, and we treat it like it's a stepchild sometimes. It's like, no, it's a sweet player. It's got great, and then we try to do things to downgrade it because we're not comfortable with SoundCloud. We don't like it. We got to find things wrong with it. And they've got, they have a community that's thriving over there. I've been posting to SoundCloud now. I use their free account, and I get 3, 4, 5 likes. I got 25 listens on SoundCloud last week. That's the most I've ever gotten.
You're going to say mine are usually in single digits, maybe double digits.
Well, not everyone. Usually mine are 5. That's kind of the number I get on SoundCloud. But when I put Clamor on SoundCloud, boom, it just it like took on a whole new life out there. And if I work SoundCloud a little bit more, I bet I could do better on it.
That's interesting.
One of those kinds of things.
That's a really interesting thing there, because I've always trying to figure out, like, how do I gauge return on investment from Clamor, if I put my stuff on SoundCloud, which it usually is anyway, and point people to that,
Yeah.
then I could see, am I getting any
You
listens?
come over. You can at least get some numbers.
Yeah.
This week on for the last 2 weeks now on Clamor, I've tried where I post every day. So I take not the same audio, and I need to change up the titles. I've been using the same title all week, but I need to put an identifier in there so I know which one's doing well. But I post a new Clamor every day, and man, my Clamor, I'm 100. I got 100 and some followers now, and I'm getting 10 to 15 likes per clip that I'm putting out there. So this daily, while I don't podcast daily, I act like I'm doing it on Clamor, and that has actually paid some dividends as far as the points of contact. I don't know if anybody's actually coming over and listening. I guess I could look in my Google stats and see what I'm getting from Clamor, because you would think if they're pushing that play button, it would show up somewhere in my stats, right? At that point that it's coming from Clamor. I haven't done that.
It is interesting to see what people are like. On episode 4 of the Clamor cast, we had our first recipe. Like somebody clamored a recipe. And they had a
I
picture
heard
of
that.
food.
That was cool.
And I was like, all right, that's a little different.
That was, by the way, I'm digging Clamorcast.
you?
I added that. I'm listening to that. My goal is to get in it. So like I've been, what do I need to do? What do I need to do?
It's all about the likes.
20?
Yeah. The thing I was talking to Dave from Clamor, and I said, it's weird because I'm on episode 4, and I said, what I'm doing now is I listen to the Clamors beforehand, and I said I can listen to it and go, okay, I can poke fun. There's a funny line here I can say, and if it is, it's not about me, but they basically said we need more Dave in this. Don't just make it a countdown. I'm like, okay. So if it's something I can poke fun at or have fun with, I will. And if there's just nothing there, I don't force it. I'm like, just all right. And that was 17 on to 16. And, and hopefully I told him, I said, that's kind of why I like this show. Creatively, it's a challenge because I have no idea what I'm going to get. Zero, and I have a list of things that they'll say, here's some honorable mentions if you want to, but they completely leave it up to me. But I just kind of went, okay. And if there's nothing there, I'm not going to force a funny line or, something that's like, let's just move on. Cause I've had other people said, I thought it was going to be shorter cause it's 20, 18-second clips. And I'm like, well, we throw in a Clamor tip of the week now. I added that. And so we shall see. But,
I like where it's going. You're getting, it's going to take you a couple episodes, 10 to 15 to get into the rhythm. I like you're changing on the fly, right? You're learning things about what you're doing. You're getting feedback. You're making changes each week to it. I like that part of it. I think you're figuring out what the audience wants to hear in these. Are you getting much feedback? Are you getting
0?
Okay.
Yeah. This is the
first
first
getting
I've
100 or so listens, maybe between 50 and 100 listens.
Yeah. Let me log in. I think I'm up to, now some of them have had gone over 100, but like the initial spike, let me look at my total. Holy cow, total plays, 976 listens. Wow, episode number 3 had 298 plays.
Oh, good.
They
pimped you.
That was.
They put out a note on, where did I hear that?
I saw it on Facebook.
Maybe that was it. Maybe in the Facebook group.
But it is I'm trying to figure out, plays. So they don't call them downloads in Podbean. Their stats aren't bad. They're here, let me, how are we doing on time? Okay, because I have to.
How are you doing on time? That's the key. I'm good.
Let me show you what Podbean stats look like. So you go in. They do have one stat that nobody else has. So here's my 976 listens. So here you can see where it came out. And then I don't know what happened on the 3rd. That was probably when the last episode came out. So I've got my iOS versus Mac, Safari versus iPhone versus Firefox. Here's my total plays per episode. And then trending is kind of a head scratcher. It looks kind of like the same thing. And then you can go to platforms. And so here's Windows, Mac, Android, iPhone, bots. I'm like, bots? 1.64 of my traffic is from bots.
Wow. Bots make the world go around.
Yeah. So here, clients, Chrome, Safari, iPhone, kind of the same stuff. But what's interesting, and then their geography, only like some of these are like, I have some listens over here, but apparently you have to have a fair amount before you turn blue. But this is the one I'm like, I think this is how often your feed gets hit. And so when I saw this stat, I'm actually using the Podbean feed because there is a redirect. So I'm safe there. But I was like, that's an interesting stat that I don't see in Blueberry or Libsyn. That I was like, interesting. And you can see it's podcast, iTunes, podcast, Overcast. That was probably me from last night. So it's kind of and then the Google Analytics would be if I wanted to, which I probably should throw some in here. I could track stats on the Podbean site. It's for people that want to use Podbean as their website. So they're not horrible stats. I was like, all right, it's kind of interesting. I don't have the thing where, like with Libsyn and Blueberry, I think I can go in and see the actual stats of each episode, like the geography of each episode and things like that. But they're not horrible stats.
No.
So
I just like the show. I think you're on, when we think about the concept of a new podcast, right? A new idea.
Mm-hmm.
You really jumped on this at the right time, doing the right thing. And that this lends itself to a top 20 countdown. I mean, amazingly well. And I think this has the potential to be your largest podcast. If Clamor takes off and you work this right, this could be by far your best loss leader for the School of Podcasting.
That's the whole plan.
Yeah. No, right on, man. I don't. It's just called. Craig's asking what's the name of the show. It's just called Clamorcast.
Yeah. If you go to clamorcast.com, CLAMMRCAST. It is kind of interesting because I have no choice. It is an explicit podcast, so and it's not by my making. But that was my first one. I forget the one where the guy's just like, N-word here, F-word there, BF, and
and the N-word came out in 2 of the clips last time. I'm like, oh God, how would I handle that? Right. Yeah. I was just thinking about you playing those, and you handled them really well. But I'm like, oh, that's subculture at its finest.
It is. And that's a whole different thing. I'm like, well, I and that's what I say. I'm so white. Casper looks at me and goes, "Man, you're white."
Yeah. Like, I don't know if I would talk about it that way, but it's certainly an issue you're gonna have to deal with as these
and the comedians it's like okay, but on the other hand, I don't want to sound like a total prude. I'm like,
and are you putting the explicit tag on there?
Yeah, everything's explicit. Everything's just it's okay here, and that's what like, and it's usually so it's usually like, all right, and it took us to episode, at number 6, we made it 14 without the explicit tag. Way to go! All right,
and this just went explicit.
Yeah,
I asked Parviz about muting. Today you can mute an artist, but I'd like them to start labeling things or give us podcasters the ability to list by explicit or not explicit. And because the Comedy Channel is horrible, and I love comedy, but the Comedy Channel is the worst. And we need to get some control, because I love clean comedy. I'm with Daniel. I like not really clean, but I like clean. I listen to John Oliver, so obviously it's not has to be that clean, right?
In fact, I'm going to pull it out of my feed right now. I had a Kevin Smith has awesome insights from podcast and cannot stop himself from dropping the F-bomb every 15 seconds. And I mean, you cannot get a clean clip out of that guy. I was like bummed. It's like, because he was saying how he goes, right now, podcasting is the breeding ground. He goes, you watch TV, radio, they're not gonna go out and find some unknown person. They're gonna go who already has an audience, right, and bring them in. And he goes, they're gonna go, oh look, it's F and so and so. Look, it's F and so. And I'm like, oh dude, why?
There's some great comedy on it. Daniel says they need a clean comedy channel, and I wish they had one, or at least a chance to filter by explicit and not explicit. That would be. I would hope. I mentioned that on the podcast to him. So that's one of those.
That's a great suggestion, because there are those people. I mean, I'm not a prude, but there are times when I just listen. I'm like, wow. Then another one, like you said, the Comedy Channel is.
If I'm going to listen to it at work, right? I mean, this is one of those kinds of things. There will be times I would not. There are some channels, and it's just not comedy. There are some podcast channels, like the new podcast stuff. Holy moly, that is very alternative, and I would not be comfortable playing that out loud at work. So thanks for emailing him, Daniel. I talked to him about it when they were on the podcast, but that's a feature I'd love to see him come. Just get an explicit tag in there as well.
Here's an interesting insight. Earwolf, the advertising platform, people kind of, I think they're part of Midroll now.
Not the movie where the guy steals the airplane.
No.
Okay.
there's an interesting podcast called The Wolf Den, which I heard about from Elsie. And this guy he's talking to Kevin Smith. He's talking to Alex Bloomberg about like the business of podcasting. Their feed is on SoundCloud. They're using SoundCloud.
Yeah. No, you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it does work. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't follow the 8 rules of Dave Jackson. Okay. They're going to break 2 of them.
Right.
But it can be done. I mean, SoundCloud's not a bad platform.
Right.
It's got some cool features to it. Yeah. And just like Shout Engine and just like Audio Mac and just like Audio Boom and just like Stitcher and just like Spreaker, I mean, they've got their pluses and minuses. I got featured, last week we mentioned I got featured on Spreaker this week in the bottom left-hand corner. Best spot ever, by the way. Amazing to have that left-hand corner. And you think, oh, I'm on. It's like new noteworthy. I'm on. Well, what it did bump my numbers on Spreaker. So they did go up, but I went from getting, maybe 15 listens a week or a day to maybe 50 or 60. Nice. So that's not a bad percentage.
Right.
It's not the thousands. You think about Spreaker, you're like, oh, Spreaker.
Right.
But hey, I'm appreciative for anything I get. So thanks, Spreaker, for putting me on the bottom. And I think it's still there. I think if you go to
you were there this morning.
Yeah,
when I was there, like, hey, he's
and
still there. Cool.
The beauty of it is you drop down to the bottom and slide over a chunk for the next 3 weeks. So your album art just keeps sliding over one until it disappears. So you don't just get 1 week of coverage. You really get 4 when you make it on Spreaker. And by the way, if you ask me how do you get on that, they contacted me.
Yes.
I didn't even ask.
I was just going to start playing with Yahoo Pipes. John says in the chat room that they're going away because I was going to make an RSS feed of all things Dave. And
well, Craig, "Clamor Me Harder" was in reference to one of the songs, like 19 or 18 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a different,
and a little edgy on there.
It is, it is Dave being edgy. I'm like, oh, this reminds me of the early days of Building a Better Dave. And I'm like, all right, well, if you guys are going to go here, I can poke fun at this. I'm like, there are times when I'm like, this doesn't really fit my brand, but I'm like, all right, well, we'll see. Yeah, the one clip was about something with vibrators and gardening equipment or something. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, great googly.
Well, I think it'll get better, Dave, as you progress and get more people on Clamor. I think the junk today, it's just a lot of junk clips. They're not very good. I mean,
the music clips that sound like porn. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it's just awful. You're going to have to kind of work through that era of garbage, and I think maybe 6 to 9 months from now, it could be really cool. Kind of really good.
Well, I got to run.
All right, bro.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, man. Good seeing you. See you next weekend.